Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this presentation we're going to be covering the topic of medicine ball throws and how we can use them to develop explosive power in order to optimize our athletic performance. So why do we use medicine ball throws or throws in general? So essentially throws are quite a good transferable quality, basically because they have an explosive triple extension that is ballistic in nature. So if we have a look here, for example, at this throw, this is a vertical medicine ball throw, and we can see at the release of the ball, there's an explosive extension here with the ankle, the knee, and the hip, and it's ballistic, which means there's no deceleration phase. So you basically throw it as high as you possibly can, or as far as you possibly can, with no deceleration, which doesn't limit the force application and the velocity. So it's a great tool for general power development. So to highlight this point a bit further, in this video we're going to see an explosive throw, and if we have a look, we get that crouch down and explosion, and if we can pause at the right time, we may be able to see that triple extension here through the ankle, knee, and hip, and then obviously it continues with that ballistic nature. So moving on, we can also have throws in all different directions. So this has relevance to force vectors, which direction we're throwing in. And if you want to learn more about this force vector topic, you can see the video Force Vectors, the Implications for the Transfer of Training to Performance on this YouTube channel if you want to learn more about this topic. But essentially, we can throw in all different directions. So we can do vertical throws, forward throws, backward throws, and rotational throws. So for example, in this throw here, we have a horizontal, so a forward force application, which may have more transfer to certain activities that have similar force vectors. So for example, this may be a good option to use as a tool to develop acceleration, because we have that similar angles and the similar ground reaction forces and similar directions of force application. So in this example here, we're going to see some rotational throws, which are probably have more transfer to sports involving rotational movements. So it's the same principles. There's an explosive ballistic movement, but this time it's just in a different direction. So how do we know how to load the throws? Do we do heavy throws? Do we do light throws? Essentially, we can do a whole range of different loads. Basically, what we need to understand though is that the heavier the loads are, the lower the velocity will be, and the lighter the loads are, the higher the velocity will be. So if we do heavier throws, they're going to be slower. If we do lighter loads, they're going to be faster. And that's based on the force-velocity relationship, which you can again see the video in this channel, the force-velocity relationship, to learn more. So, but essentially, briefly, basically, as we can see here on this side of things, this is going to be greater force. So this is in the concentric portion. The greater the force, the lower the velocity will be. But the lower the force, so the lower the load, the higher velocity will be. And again, this is going to be, the load we use is going to be specific to the qualities we're trying to work on in that particular time or that particular phase of our training. So in this example here, we have basically a vertical throw, and this is a heavier weight now. So this is a 5 kilo medicine ball. Everything's exactly the same. We're getting an explosive triple extension. This time it's in a vertical force application. But the movement is going to be slightly slower, although you can't really tell in real time, which means the velocity is lower because the load is heavier. So how do we know what throws to do and then how heavy we need to load those throws? So when we're talking about direction and load, we need to basically understand the principles of specificity. So the more specific a a movement or an exercise is, the more transfer it's going to have. The less specific, the more general it'll be, the less transfer it'll have. So essentially in general phases, we need to use more general throws. And in specific phases, we need to use more specific throws. So I've got an example here. In general, we sort of see that lighter type throws are going to be more transferable and more specific to the exercises we're trying to, the adaptations we're trying to achieve. So things like running, jumping, that sort of thing, we don't really have any load. So lighter throws are going to be a little bit more specific, and then heavier throws are going to be a little bit more general, less specific, obviously depending on the sport and the activities we're trying to achieve. So in this example here, we got something like, for example, something that's going to transfer most to acceleration or running. So we'll have heavy rotational throws, so they're heavy, they're not as, so it's going to be slower, and they're going to be in not really a specific direction, but we're still going to build some general power. We then might move in the next block of training to vertical type throws, so a little bit more specific, not rotational, and also the load's going to be a little bit lighter, so it's going to be a little bit more transferable. And then when we're in more of a specific phase, we might have some very light throws, and we might do them forward, like in that picture we saw with that basically forward lean in like an acceleration position. Or you might use throws because they're not a very specific modality at all. You might use throws in more general phases, and you might use different methods of power development in more specific phases that are going to be more specific to the sport. So you might use things like jumping and plyometrics instead of throws in those sort of phases. So this is the throw I was talking about. This is something that's a bit lighter. It's going to transfer probably a little bit better to acceleration. Get a forward direction and an explosive takeoff in a similar angle. So just to finish off, some other benefits and limitations of medicine ball throws. So a good use of medicine ball throws is going to be in season or in phases where we need to be quite fresh, and we can especially use pause variations to eliminate eccentric loading and take out the stretch shortening cycle, which is going to allow us to still get that power development, but when it's not going to cause fatigue because of the absence of the eccentric loading. However, a limitation of using medicine ball throws is that you need a decent amount of space. So small facilities may not be actually appropriate and may not be able to allow medicine ball throws, especially vertical throws if the roof's not high enough, or even in a small space with a wall, you still need a decent amount of room and make sure no one's interrupting you to get the most out of them. So that's it for this presentation, guys. Hopefully you got something out of it, and thanks for watching. You can follow Flow High Performance on social media, so on Facebook and on Instagram with the details here. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe on YouTube for the latest informative videos. So on the Flow High Performance Facebook and Instagram pages, you'll find these research infographics, which are essentially the latest research summarized into these easy to understand pictures, which basically highlight the most important information and basically what the findings of the research study was. And they're made into these easy to understand pictures so that you can stay up to date with the latest research in sports performance training. So thanks again for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video.